For me, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes proves one thing: it really takes a good director to make these stories work. Hello Flickering Myth family, and welcome to our channel. My name is EJ and we have a lot to discuss in this video. A franchise is making another round, trying to impress a new generation. Let's talk about Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. As I hinted at in the teaser for this video, wow, I really think a good director is what it takes to get a good Planet of the Apes movie. I am a bit... Okay, so I am coming into this review as a minor fan of the Planet of the Apes movies. I thought the originals are iconic, especially once they get to the more campier, weird ones. They're a really fun, intellectual, but, kind of schlocky, fun film. Great. So then we had the Marky Mark Tim Burton movie in the 90s. Not great, but I also really loved the practical effects of that. So then we had the modern era of Planet of the Apes with Rise, Dawn, and War. These were all very, impressive films. I actually just rewatched Rise and found it to be much better than I remembered it being. So these were impressive movies. Then we got Matt Reeves doing Dawn and War, and I'm like, wow, Matt Reeves made masterworks. Like, even if they weren't my favorite films ever, I understood the power of what Andy Serkis was doing as Caesar. I understood the beauty and the magic that Matt Reeves was putting into the themes, the metaphors, the emotional impact of the story. All of that was working. So with Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, we have a new director taking over the franchise, Wes Ball from the Maze Runner films. That's my first issue right there. You're really going to give the guy who made 3 mediocre Maze Runner movies a franchise? A franchise that was just lifted up so beautifully by what Matt Reeves has done? I'm not even coming into this as a Matt Reeves super fan. I don't think he has stans or anything like that on the internet. So I'm coming into this truly going, you went from one of the more interesting, the more emotionally driven directors to Wes Ball? And then we're going to give this man the Zelda movie? And again, I seem to be in the minority of this review because this movie just didn't work for me. The emotional impact was not there. While it is a visual effects, technical masterpiece, it's splendid to look at. This movie looks good. I could not find a flaw in a single ape, in a single backdrop. When they're fighting in water, it all looked great. So that is there. But beyond the technical achievements, I have no emotional connections. I have no themes, no motifs that I enjoyed watching. I don't even think the performances were anywhere near what we got from the last movies. This movie has no movie star. I think that could have helped it a little bit, but I wasn't needing a massive name. I just don't think the characters, the acting is on par with what we've seen before, and that what makes it just makes this one a bit more difficult for me, because I don't want to be mean to this movie. I don't think it's a piece of trash, but the more I think about it, the more I'm just it's so cold to me. It's so sterile. It feels like it's just going through the emotions. It's just hitting the beats that you're supposed to hit for a Planet of the Apes movie, and then that's just it. It wanted to just make a bare bones Planet of the Apes film, almost to keep the IP fresh in our minds as Disney gets a new IP to play with. It feels like this just doesn't have the emotional weight, the gravitas as the previous franchise did. And then looking at it on its own, it's just not that well made of a story. The pacing, all that, we'll get into that right now. We begin the movie and we're thrusted 300 years after the death of Caesar. We are in a new territory for the Planet of the Apes film, though if you are familiar with the original franchise, it seems like we're getting closer and closer to where that movie started. So we are here 300 years after, and society is crazy. It is mostly run by apes, and the humans that are left are feral creatures who barely know how to speak at all. So when we start our story, we meet Noah. He is a young ape trying to, find his place in his little clan. He has an egg that he's so excited to do for his eagle clan, and it's cute. And then, the story it's kind of cut in half for me. It's the beginning of Noah, the adventure. He loses his clan. He has this very insane moment where he has to figure out where he goes, so he starts venturing out to find his family, and that's the first half of the movie. We meet Raka, I believe his name is, a orangutan who is super wise, who honestly is my favorite character once he kind of dips out of the movie. I lose the best character of the movie, the only one with a heart and a soul to it. And we also meet Nova, who is the human girl of the film. She is much more intelligent than the other humans that are around. So Noah is a bit hesitant of her, as he doesn't know what to do, but he's desperate to find his family, his clan that was taken away from him by an evil man named Proximus Caesar. Yes, someone has heard the teachings of Caesar and has changed how it is and is living a much different life than Caesar would have presented. That is my favorite motif of this whole movie, is the idea of a religion, maybe someone having teachings, having books written, having his ideas put out there, and then 300 years later, society takes it and does horrible things with it. Very interesting religious concepts there. I like that. That is the one theme I like throughout this movie, but it feels disconnected from the first half of the movie to the second half of the movie, where again, we're on this journey. We're learning about, maybe there's certain orangutans, there's certain chimps, there's certain different apes in this field that just don't respect the teachings of what Caesar once did. But then the second half of this movie is just thrusted into Proximus Caesar's lifestyle and his weird encampment that he has of all these apes. And I'm like, so now we're just in I don't know, that the whole second half of the movie just feels so disconnected. It feels like we're learning some things. Here's the themes, here's the motifs, here's the ideas we're going to present in the first hour of the movie. The second hour leaves all that behind for a 30-minute final battle that is not that impressive. That, again, visually it is, but emotionally, story-wise, the actual fight choreography, what happens, it doesn't impress me as much. Again, visually, really on point. So that's what this movie really confused me narratively. There is, again, ideas presented in that first hour where it is just kind of like a road trip movie. It's Noah, it's Raka, it's Nova, and they're all kind of just exploring, learning about each other. Yeah, there's some conflict. That's really interesting. But once that conflict gets there and once we're at the camp, it feels like two different movies thrust into one. I would have loved the first half of this movie being them trying to get to Proximus's area. And once we get there, we learn it is not what we thought it was going to be. It's far worse. It's far more torturous. Bam, that's where we are for our second film. If this is going to be a trilogy, I have nothing to look forward to. We end this movie the way the movie starts, which is my least favorite thing to ever happen in a movie, because by the time it ended, I felt like there was no point. What did I sit here for? I felt like my characters barely progressed. I feel like, yes, we started some things that are going to get us closer to where Planet of the Apes originally started back in the 60s, but besides that, what was the point of the end of the story? Like, the beginning and the end just mirror each other so much, and not in the wow, the growth of the mirroring. No, it just felt like a reflection. When it ended, I was just like, oh, so what was the whole point of this movie? Like, it's tough because, again, I appreciate the work that they put into it. I just feel like the work in the script department was lacking a bit. I'm going to be a bit maybe too honest with this part of the review. I have a problem connecting with CGI people, creatures, aliens, anything like that. I have a personal issue, like, having an emotional attachment to them. I feel like, well, they're not real, so something in my brain kind of turns it off. But it takes a good story. It takes a good setup. Like, again, the beginning of Rise, you really feel for Caesar as he's growing and as he then gets, thrusted into that kind of horrible place where they're keeping all the apes. And then, we feel that emotion. Then by the time we get to the second movie, you understand it. So I'm able to kind of connect more. This movie thrusts you into a story with Noah, and Owen Teague, who is the actor playing him, does a decent job, but I'm not connected to him. I'm not getting the emotional attachment that I had with Caesar. But again, because we're rushing the story, it feels like they want to start this story with Noah like we knew him for years, like he is an old friend, like we would have seen Caesar in maybe the second film. But we don't know this character, and just because he looks like Caesar doesn't really mean that I have the same attachments to him, doesn't mean that I feel the same thing. I need to be reintroduced to these characters, into this world, for me to be fully attached. And it's not just the apes. This is how I feel about the Avatar movies. Like, James Cameron, I think, is a talented filmmaker by the technical aspects, and I love the way the Na'vi look, but I don't connect to them. There's no, during the big battle with all the kids in the last movie, and I'm like, Okay, can the movie end real quick? And again, it's a personal preference for me, but I think a talented filmmaker could really make me feel for these non-human, these non-real characters. I'm just able to connect with them, like Matt Reeves made me with War and with Rise, or with War and Dawn. But at the same time, he didn't make Rise, and I really felt like I got to know Caesar there. I think this movie just had a problem. I think Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes had a problem with just putting us into a story and expecting us to have emotional attachments, to be invested in the story. And I personally wasn't. And I needed maybe a little bit more hand holding to really find my groove in this world, in the story. But by the end of it, like I said, it stopped, it ended where it started. None of the characters had real fun or interesting motivations. There was no motifs and themes that I thought were strong. Overall, I'm just kind of left cold by this movie. It's sterile, it's clinical, it's just making a Planet of the Apes movie to make one, and I need a little bit more juice. I need a little bit more magic, a little bit more pizzazz to really grab me in. Look, I usually do not like giving movies a negative score on Rotten Tomatoes, but this movie feels like a major regression. It just feels like we took a step back. Now, I'm not saying this franchise is done for me. I'm not saying I am just gonna tune it all out. Maybe I will be more invested by a second film, but right now, with what's presented here, I don't really care. And that's the most plain, brutal way I can say it. I don't care, and I want to care because, again, what's presented here is decent ideas with good technical achievements, but give me a reason to care. Give me a better story. Give me a stronger story. Give me better pacing. All of that can make me really fall in love with your universe, but I'm just left cold, distant, and not caring. Alright guys, that is it for my review. Share your thoughts down in the comments below. Give me a thumbs up, and make sure you subscribe to Flickering Myth for more videos just like this. And let's talk about Planet of the Apes right down below.